Hello, everyone. Greetings to each one of you from MIT ADT University, Pune, India. It's indeed a great privilege and pleasure for me to be part of this first TESOL International Conference at Thailand. I'm really glad to be one of the keynote speakers and make this virtual presentation. And before I begin, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Professor Dr. Romel Tabula and his team, the entire organizing committee team, for this wonderful opportunity. I'd like to make a small presentation on this interesting topic, that is pain and sword, and how we as researchers, as writers, can have a toolbox for research and overcome common errors that we are likely to make. When we talk about research or writing for research purposes, we need to keep in mind that research is creating new knowledge, and therefore, whenever we carry out any research study, we need to make that contribution and take the research area to greater heights. Now, when we look at how technology has influenced the way we live, the way we think, the way we educate or get educated, and even the way we carry out research, we can see the words on the screen that have received additional meanings attached to them because of the influence or incorporation of technology. So I can say once upon a time, when window was just a small square hole in a house, when application was something written on a piece of paper, when keyboard was the piano and mouse was just an animal, when file was an important official document and hard drive was a very hectic long road trip, when cut was done with a knife and paste with glue, when web was a spider's house and virus was flu. And mind you, apple and blackberry were only fruits. So this is how changes are inevitable. Language keeps on changing with the invention of various technological developments. When printing was invented, language received new forms. When television was invented, language received new forms. When computer was invented, again language received new forms and even additional meanings attached to such words. Now, when we carry out research, we need to write, we need to read, and therefore it is said that either write something worth reading or do something worth writing. And if we carry out our research, which is worth writing, then we need a toolbox as researchers to overcome the common errors. Now, when we talk about research, we usually only think of PhD, and therefore PhD life. When we go through this, whenever we carry out or conduct any research study, this is what people think, but this is what we end up doing. And therefore, research involves many aspects. And initially, we can see more enthusiasm, but as time passes, sometimes we see the level of interest, motivation sometimes going down, or again, the supervisor has to inject confidence in the candidate, and again, it might come up and down. But what we end up doing might not be the same that we thought of in the initial stage. And therefore, as researchers, we should not overthink, but give our best. And that is how we can come up with a better result and study. And in this case, learning or research have no age criterion as such. Age doesn't really matter. It's all about the necessity and interest. However, we also undergo various studies and various steps like these, especially when we submit our articles for publication. And this is what happens. And the end product, after considering all the revisions by the reviewers in light of their suggestions, this is what sometimes people end up doing. We also have some assumption like this, that this is what I'll produce at the end of my research study. And when we actually start writing, this is what we end up writing. And therefore, here I would like to recall very interesting story where some scientists decided to carry out some experiments on an animal that was a dog. So they decided to go ahead with three experiments. In the first experiment, they cut one of the dog's legs off, and then they asked the dog to walk. And when the dog could get up and could walk, what they concluded as part of this first experiment was that a dog can walk with just three legs. In the second experiment, they cut another leg, the second leg of the dog, and again they asked the dog to walk. And now this time the conclusion was that the dog is still able to walk even with two legs. In the third experiment, they cut yet another leg from the dog. And once more they asked the dog to walk. And this time the dog is not able to walk, only with one leg. And as a result of these three experiments, they concluded in their final report, they wrote that the dog had lost its hearing sense because its three legs were cut off. So does any research study attempt to do something like this? That we need to check. Otherwise, the results could be something else than what we decide or what we assume. And therefore, E in PhD means enjoyment, but that E comes after D in the letter PhD. And therefore, enjoyment can come later. And I would also go to the extent of saying that actual research begins after PhD. And therefore, you might go through a lot of pain, but remember it's temporary. The degree that you get after you complete your doctorate, that is forever. And therefore, choosing your first stone well, building that foundation is very essential. And in one of the poems, Indian poems, it is said that if you choose your first stone well, the kind you can get built upon, the stones will naturally or automatically stand. And therefore, a researcher should have this approach like a bird building its nest. Which college or university does a bird go to learn or acquire such a skill? This happens only because the bird possesses certain skills and qualities, and most of them are also visible or seen in human beings. And therefore, as a researcher, we need to have this kind of approach to build intellectual curiosity, have an observant eye, an open mind, and honest mind, of course, followed by good reading, writing habits, along with managing your time, being good at using technology, and of course, very importantly, a mind without excuses. Now, when we talk about common errors in writing for research purposes, we need to understand the difference between errors and mistakes. The difference is errors, we make them because we are not aware of the correct and incorrect ways. And therefore, errors, once we know that something is wrong, and if I still use that second time, then it becomes a mistake. So errors are natural. We welcome them, but mistakes are not welcome because we should never repeat mistakes. Now, when we talk about reasons why we are likely to make such common errors, because most of us are non-native users of English, and therefore we naturally have influence of our mother tongue. We look at English through the lenses of our mother tongue. And therefore, the framework of one language may not necessarily match with the framework of another language. Now, when we carry out research and go ahead with reading, we read a lot, we download many books, but we hardly read each one of them. So this much reading happens compared to what we download. Now, when we talk about writing, we need to keep in mind the role that these four basic skills play. If one has to be good at speaking, one should be a good listener. Similarly, if one has to be a good writer, one must be a good reader. So when we talk about writing skills, reading is like an input. And when you write, you produce language, therefore it becomes output. Now, when we talk about reading, it is said that today a reader, tomorrow a leader. And therefore reading is an interesting journey. But when we carry out this journey, we might not read each and everything in the same way. On day-to-day basis, for example, what you see on the screen, we read all these things on, in our day-to-day environment or situations. All these things we read, whether they are, advertisements, books, magazines, and, guides, film subtitles, messages. We read all of them, but the question is, do we read all these things in the same way? Of course, the answer is no. Sometimes we skim, sometimes we scan, or there could be intensive or extensive reading, or sometimes even reading between or beyond the lines. And therefore, reading is called exercise. What exercise is to the body, same is the case with reading to our mind. And the book that we gift anyone, that is a gift which we can open again and again as many times as we want. And every time we open it and read, we will always be able to find something new. And when we read, sometimes there could be ambiguity, two meanings, like you can see the word good, but if you look at the white part inside, you can also see the word evil. So sometimes the meaning could be hidden, or it could be ambiguous text giving us two or more than two possible interpretations. Look at this, for example, if I ask you, what do you see? Some of you might say, I see a duck. Some of you might say, I see a rabbit. It depends on which direction you are looking at. The picture can also be ambiguous. Where are these people and what are they doing? So they are at a seashore, but what are they doing? Some people might say they are dancing. Some people might say they are flying kites. Or what do you see in the sky? Birds, kites, or sheep, and different interpretations might come up. And therefore, we need to overcome this ambiguity. Whenever we read or whenever we write, we have to ensure that there is no ambiguity in what we write. Because writing is thinking through your fingers, and that has to be effectively done. So as part of writing, we might draft something, we have to proofread, edit, paraphrase, summarize, we write letters, emails, reports, and the list goes on. And as part of research, we write reports or thesis, and we therefore need to overcome these common errors and be good at this. Now, when we talk about written communication in comparison with spoken communication, there are many advantages for written communication because you get adequate time to plan and to produce language, and you can make as many corrections as many times as you wish to. You can include as much information as you want, and this could be used as an evidence. It can be even done in the absence of a receiver. Unlike speaking, you can't speak unless you have a listener to listen to. And you can make multiple copies, it can be referred repeatedly, and you can include large quantum of information. However, there are many drawbacks as well, because you may not necessarily receive immediate feedback because it is not a live interaction. Time for reaching the information to the receiver might be sometimes long. We can't add emotions, gestures, and it can be rigid. Every time we might not be able to modify. Now, how people write, look at this sample advertisement for a washing machine. And it said, don't kill your wife, let our washing machine do the dirty work. So again, this is ambiguous, and therefore we need to take care of this. Like we have expressions, emotions in speaking that we can showcase, in writing we have to rely on punctuation. And they also help, the punctuation also help us when we read to take correct pauses. So if punctuation is missing, the meaning might also change. If I say, let's say grandma and let's say grandma, the meaning is different. Similarly, a woman, without her, man is nothing. So woman is important. But if I change the place of punctuation and naturally change my pause, the meaning will also change. A woman without her man is nothing. Now man is important. So this is why punctuation also is very essential, and we need to overcome common errors which we are likely to make while using punctuation or even spelling. Look at this sentence, only one word, if I add it at different places in the sentence, the meaning changes as I move the word from one place to another in the same sentence. So that is why we have to be very careful about the placing of words and the use of words whenever we write or whenever we communicate. A couple of more examples of ambiguity. Did you see the girl with the telescope? The lady hit the man with an umbrella. He gave her cat food. Stolen painting found by tree. They are hunting dogs. These are all ambiguous sentences. At the same time, language can be used creatively. Look at these sample hoardings or signages that people had. At forest department, it said, shoot the bird with camera, not with gun. Traffic department, donate blood, but not on roads. Petrol pump, no smoking. Your life may be worthless, but our petrol is costly. Hospital board, if you still want to continue looking at girls even after your death, donate your eyes. So this is how language could also be used creatively. Then when we focus on effective writing, we need to follow these scientific steps of brainstorming, mind mapping, then coming up with our first draft, second draft, third, and if required more, and then the final draft. So these are the steps that we follow. And we really need to keep ourselves into the shoes of our readers because the perception might change. For example, when we look at this picture, some of us might see a young girl or some of us might see an old woman. It all depends on how we perceive the picture. And therefore, it is said that research is to think what nobody else has thought. And that is how we can contribute. Now, when we talk about a researcher's toolbox, their skills that he or she possesses or need to possess become his or her tools. So when we talk about skills, these are different abilities that we use as a researcher. So you need to, first of all, have good physical skills, the capacity that you have when you carry out any research study. Additionally, good thinking skills, followed by different basic skills, which include reading, writing, good mathematics, speaking, and listening. And when we talk about thinking skills, under the umbrella of thinking skills, we also cover creative thinking, problem solving, decision making, and visualization. Then people skills also play very important role for any researcher. So they might be social, negotiation, leadership, teamwork, cultural diversity, and the list goes on. Then under thinking skills, we also cover reading, spelling, understanding, and the list goes on from these skills to almost the skills of planning, problem solving. And when we talk about communication, speaking clearly, ability to communicate effectively, listen, read, write, these skills really become very important. Then you also need to be good at interpersonal communication, followed by numerical skills, information skills, personal management skills, and most importantly, the functional skills that you see on the screen. Now, when we carry out any research, the research could be basic research or it could be applied research. Depending on that, we need to showcase the path that we are going to follow, because in applied research, we deal with different aspects compared to the basic research. And therefore, the fundamentals in research that we need to keep in mind are validity and reliability. And once we do that, then we reflect through them, the outcomes that we have. So when we carry out research, what exactly are we going to cover? So under language, for example, it could be anything under English language teaching, for example. It could be policies, syllabus, curriculum, material, use of technology, methodology, that is pedagogy, and the list can go on. So what is the overall methodology, whether it is qualitative, quantitative, or mixed method research, that again we need to think as a good researcher while using this toolbox. And of course, various methods again become your sub-tools as a researcher to use. And therefore, having good observation, carrying out surveys, seeking feedback, opinions, and carrying out analysis, testing, verbal reports, all these things also become your important tools. And who do you research? So whether you are going to carry out research with teachers, learners, who are being researched, whether they are individuals, what is their background, mother tongue, qualification, everything needs to be taken into account. And then we follow various steps of research. that you see on the screen become, our steps for any research study that we carry out. We also are required to carry out a pilot study, test what we design, and then again modify, make changes, and go ahead with the actual study. So, in a nutshell, when we carry out any research, we need to be aware of the assumptions that we make for different areas of research, the exact aims and goals that we have, and what are the limitations, the boundaries that we need to set. Otherwise, there is no end to research, and therefore following appropriate methods. So once we do this, then we need to write about what we research. So our plan may look very simple, but the reality when we witness or start with this journey, there might be many ups and downs that we have to go through. But once we overcome the challenges and reach the destination, the joy is very different. Now, when we define research problem, we need to again identify and formulate the problems. And we should not only look at the dictionary definition of the problem. We have to go beyond. For example, look at this picture. What you see in the picture, the person is holding a piece of wood in his hand. The question is, what will happen to the piece of wood when the person lets go of it? If he leaves his fingers, what will happen? So the first answer is it will fall. But as a researcher, we should not only look at the context in which we are at present, we need to go beyond the definition of the problem. And therefore, the answer depends. If the person is standing on a ground, on the earth, then it will fall because of the gravitational force. If the person is holding a piece of wood and is floating underwater, if he leaves his fingers, the wood, piece of wood will float to the surface. And what will happen into the space? You know that neither the person nor the piece of wood will move in any direction. This is how researcher has to look at different possibilities and solve or deal with problems. And therefore, research is not an accidental discovery. It is not merely collecting data and putting it in a sequence and writing it, or searching out published research results. Otherwise, it becomes like the story of blind men and an elephant. It's a famous Indian fable because things aren't always what we think. There were 6 blind men and they went to observe an elephant for the first time. So one feels the side and thinks elephant is like a wall. One feels the tusk and thinks the elephant is like a spear. One touches the swimming trunk and thinks the elephant is like a snake. And this is how, all the 10 blind men perceive elephant differently. And that is what might also happen in research that we need to take care of. And therefore, research is searching for explanation of events, phenomena, or relationships and cause and effect. It is a creative process for which we have to plan and execute by managing not only ourselves, but managing others and managing the research work that we wish to carry. The methodology, as I said, could be either quantitative, qualitative, or mixed method research. And then as researchers, we explore various academic search engines and platforms, and then reflect on what others have done and how we can take this topic or area to different or greater heights. And therefore, we explore these various platforms, and we must do that as researchers because doing research is very crucial, but writing about what you research is equally crucial or important. And therefore, writing is a skill worth learning. It can be improved because it is an art more than a science. And therefore, why write? Because any work that we carry out as part of our research, we should be able to talk about it. And therefore, we should be able to describe what we do. Now, whenever people write and the common comments that we receive from reviewers of various journals, as far as language errors are concerned, so there are usually errors in grammar, structure. There is no consistency in the use of style, formal, informal, or register. That is subject matter and how language changes according to the subject matter. Or there is usually lack of cohesion and coherence, logical sequencing, arrangement, connect between 2 or more than 2 sentences, phrases, clauses, and the list goes on like this. The choice of words and then ambiguity that we need to take care of. So you may have good research area and you develop good content, you also have a good structure in which you put the content. But when it is error free, you will be able to keep this balance and make your research outcome publishable. And therefore, as researchers or even as teachers, if we dare to teach, we must never cease to learn. And therefore, when we talk about the other person, the receivers, this is what happens. Just because I am right doesn't mean that the other person is wrong. So we have to keep the other person in mind, or we need to keep ourselves into the shoes of the readers. Common errors in language also are in these categories of tenses, articles, especially, then subject and verb agreement, prepositions, complex sentences. So whenever you want to publish your paper, again, you follow these steps. What is the type of journal, how review is done. But of course, everyone goes through these steps, but we all are likely to make common errors or common errors that happen usually in writing. And therefore, let us quickly go through these some sentences which we need to correct only if necessary. So the researchers had given these instructions to all the respondents. It is in past perfect tense. There is single action, so we must use the simple past. So it should be the researchers gave these instructions, not had given these instructions. We are observing this as researchers in the lab for the last 10 months. The action started in the past, that is still going on. It is likely to continue. So we must use present perfect continuous tense. So it will be we have been observing, not we are observing. Then number 3, the researcher has already revised the settings for these experiments a few weeks ago. The past adverbial a few weeks ago. So we should use past tense. So the researcher already revised simple past tense, not even past perfect tense. Why you are asking this question? We need to shift the auxiliary to the front. So it should be why are you asking, not you are asking. The researcher asked the participants if they are willing to participate in the interaction. Indirect speech. So if they are willing, it should be if they were willing to participate. The paper discusses about this issue. About is not needed here. So the paper discusses this issue. Researchers must take proper care of all their equipments in the lab. So equipment is always singular, unless we talk about, say, for example, equipment from different labs. Otherwise, in general, it would be singular. You must avail of this golden opportunity. So you availing yourself of something and availing something, there is a difference. Your finding is more perfect than what is given in the paper. So comparative degree, we need to be again careful. The researcher did not give his examination because he was unwell. We don't give exam as students, as scholars, as candidates. We take exam. As teachers, we give exam to our students. None of the respondents have reported so far, has reported so far. Subject and verb agreement. The experiment may probably produce the desired effects. May probably redundant expressions. So use only one of them. Myself carried out the experiments. I carried out the experiments rather than myself. There is no response from the respondents since 2019. There has been no response. I advise the researchers to work hard. Spelling, advise, CE is a noun and SE is a verb. What's your good name? Especially in India, people might ask a question like this because in Hindi, the regional language, we say Shubhanam, that is good name. And therefore, this is literally translated. I did a mistake by asking her to assess the manuscript. I made a mistake. They're all junior than me, junior to me. The step has to be repeated again. So repeated only. The word again is not required. Unless it doesn't work. So too negative again creates a confusion. So unless it works, the study won't succeed. One of the participants is a scientist at NCL, National Chemical Lab. So one of the participants, there are many participants and I'm talking about one of them. If we will boil water, it will produce the result. The first clause in a conditional sentence has to be in the simple present. So if we boil water, it will produce the result. This study deals with historic reading. So historic and historical, there is a difference. The instruments reminded him his lab work. The instruments reminded him of his lab work. I look forward to study this. I look forward to studying this. Verb has to be in ing. Then we also have some errors in syntax, that is grammar or structure. Like many uncountable nouns are used as countable. For example, accommodations, furnitures, datas, peoples, children's, women's, men's, and the list can go on. Then prepositions are used differently in different languages, and therefore there could be mother tongue interference. He is angry with me, but in Indian languages, for example, we say he's angry on me. So as a result, people also tend to use those prepositions in English. Comparative, more, better. You can say much better, otherwise just a better. This arrangement is better than that. Reflexive pronoun myself is not grammatically correct. And therefore, you can say I myself open the door, but not myself open the door. So you can simply say I open the door. Stative verbs sometimes are used dynamically in ing forms. I'm knowing him very well. I know him very well. I'm having one brother, one sister. You can just say I have one brother and one sister. Then present perfect used with past adverbial. I have completed the work yesterday. I completed the work yesterday. Then present progressive instead of present perfect progressive. I am learning music since 1997. It should be I have been learning music since 1997. Then the use of question tag again becomes problematic. And then framing questions, shifting the auxiliary. When we talk about morphological errors, again redundancy is commonly seen. Headache, pain, turn back, climb up, fall down, and the list goes on. So we need to avoid this redundancy as well. Then there should be consistency in the use of style and register. When we talk about style, we follow either formal, informal, prosy, intimate, or neutral style. And for research writing, we usually follow formal style. Then depending on the subject matter, you may have a different register that we need to be aware of. Then cohesion and coherence. So we must use cohesive devices like however, nevertheless, on the one hand, on the other hand, further, and the list goes on. So these cohesive devices help the readers understand the connection. And coherence is the relationship across the paragraphs in the discourse. So there has to be logical arrangement and sequencing of your ideas. Other common typical mistakes are with the title of the paper or the study. So we need to overcome them. Abstract usually not updated in light of the paper. So we usually submit an abstract, but once we write the paper, we again need to revise the abstract in light of what we have written in the paper. Sometimes keywords are missing, or people use a lot of keywords, or they don't insert a comma in between, or unnecessarily insert a period or a full stop. Punctuation marks sometimes are used unnecessarily. We also need to avoid informal words like so, first of all, I, we, you, are, and the list goes on. We should also avoid contractions in formal research writing. Instead of writing we apostrophe re, it should be full, words. We are, I am, they are, and the list goes on. Then we also need to avoid using simple words like says. XYZ says, PQR says, every time people say says. Instead, can we use different synonyms like XYZ argues, points out, presents, concludes, comments, maintains, suggests, and this is how you can replace the typical word says with many such other verbs. Some unnecessary phrases like real fact. Facts are always real, so just say a fact. Unnecessary use of words like actually, basically, only. Then whenever we write, don't write numbers like 2 and 3, as you can see, spell them out from 1 to 9 at least. Then starting sentences with numbers. Don't begin your sentences with numbers. Avoid using ing forms unnecessarily. Errors like cope up with, just say cope with. Also, then these are unnecessarily used words at different places by many researchers. Avoid using abbreviations. Use the full form somewhere in your entire thesis. Singular and plural, we must know the correct forms. equipments, children's, peoples, as I said some time ago. I also come across this phrase comprise of. We don't use the preposition of. So this comprises something, not comprises of. One of the experiment, one of the experiments. Prepositions, we must know the difference when we use such prepositions. What is the difference between in and into, between and among, discuss about is not needed, since and for, on and over, listen followed by to. Then definite articles are very problematic. I mean, people have problems with using the definite article. So we should also take care of that. Then which and what are not interchangeable. If the choice is given in front of you, use which. And if it is an abstract choice, use what. For example, I have two kinds of books, one small and one big. Which one do you want? So the choice is given, that's why which. What kind of books do you like? It's an abstract choice. Then some wrong sentences with correct versions. The researchers use a lot of books. Researchers use a lot of books. Then the is article, the is not required because I'm speaking in general. The Pune is a big city. Pune is a big city. Proper nouns, we don't use articles. This is best sample. This is the best sample. Then we also need to shift pronouns. One cannot fail in the experiment unless you want to. You cannot fail in the experiment unless you want to, or one cannot fail in the experiment unless they want to. Then we also sometimes misuse words because of their spelling variation. Sometimes mistakes are made. So we need to take care of them. Subject and verb agreement. Researchers at the university level usually is very best, are very best. People has different personalities. People have different personalities. When we use punctuation, especially colons, look at these examples. So the first one is incorrect, followed by the correct one in both these cases. Commas, again, what is incorrect and what is correct, you can see, you can separate the two sentences sometimes when you talk about two different ideas rather than using the comma. Periods before and after quotes. So we have variation in American and British English, and you can look at that as well. Hyphens, M dash and N dash. Again, M dash and N dash, there is a difference that we need to be aware of. So where to use hyphen, where to use M or N dash, that we need to know. Run-on sentences, again, we need to be, to separate them using punctuation. Then apostrophes, unnecessary use of apostrophes that we need to avoid. Like yours faithfully, some people put an apostrophe before S. Contractions, we need to have full forms, and we should not use apostrophes in plural forms that many people use. Then dangling modifier, we need to take care of. Look at this sentence. After reading the book, the movie made more sense. After reading the book, I thought the movie made more sense. So who read the books? That is a dangling modifier. And therefore, when I, the pronoun is inserted, this means I was the one reading the books. While walking to work, a police car was viewed whizzing by. While walking to work, Arnold viewed a police car whizzing by. So use of pronouns will help us overcome such problems. Different than, different from. The adjective different is used when you draw distinction. So it's followed by a preposition. Then who versus whom. Who is a subjective pronoun, whom is objective pronoun. Who loves you and you are loved by whom. So there is a difference. Fever versus less. Fever is countable, versus is not. Less is intangible concepts. He ate fewer chocolates than the other guy. I spent less than 1 hour finishing this report. Passive and active voice, as far as possible, use active voice. It is easier to understand. Like if you take your paper through a Grammarly test, it will highlight all the passive voice sentences. So wherever possible, try to use active voice more than the use of passive voice. Whether and if, there are no alternatives, two or more alternatives in case of if and whether. Then look at the original sentence. Jim is 8 years old, John is 9 years old, and Joe is 10 years old. So this sentence, although it is grammatically correct, is too long and repetitive. So we can convert it into a concise form. Jim, John, and Joe are 8, 9, and 10 years old respectively. So we must use it correctly. Then lack of parallelism. Tina likes reading, painting, and to cook. So it should be cooking. Or you can say Tina likes to read, paint, and cook. Then whenever we receive any feedback by any reviewers, and if they use track changes option, we should focus on them and go through each and every correction made. Otherwise, avoiding experts' help for proofreading and editing will result in something. Let me now quickly, before I end, focus on some cliches in writing that we need to avoid. Above mention is a cliche. Don't use it unnecessarily. So instead of saying thank you very much for registering for the above mentioned workshop, you can just say for this workshop, the reader knows which workshop we are talking about. Then asset to, you can simply say, we cannot agree to. As per, again, unnecessarily, as per your request, you can just say as you requested, and the same. Then attached and enclosed, there is a difference. For emails, we say attach. For letters, we say enclose. The word herewith is not necessary here. So you can just say I enclose or I attach, not herewith. Then in order to, you just say to. In the event that, you can just say if. In view of the fact, you can just use as, since, or because. Then spelling, either follow British English or American English and have consistency in your spelling. Then kindly and request, usually do not go together. So I kindly request you. You can just I request you, or please, something like outstation, overseas, out of the office. Revert, people say revert back. You just say reply or revert. Please revert to me soon on this matter. I hope to hear from you soon. Could be a better choice. Don't say thank you in advance. You can write another thank you letter once the person completes the task. Even thanking you in anticipation is unnecessary or a wrong usage. The fact that you can simply say due to the fact that, despite the fact that, but it is a little old fashioned. Again, active and passive voice, as we discussed. Active voice makes your writing more interesting, more lively, and simple for the reader to understand. So use active voice wherever possible. So in a nutshell, what we have understood is that as a researcher, once you complete your study, once you carry out, you should not give up making corrections in your writing your first draft, second draft, third draft, taking suggestions into consideration from others and improving, because that is how, if we have consistency in making improvements, this is how we can achieve our target. And look at the approach of a bird in building a nest. Similarly, we build our research study, and that we do all alone, of course, in under the guidance of our supervisor. But this is how we need to be an engineer in carrying out research, whether we have any formal engineering degree or not, but we need to have that approach in building the nest of our research. And therefore, as Robert Frost said, the road not taken, the poem, two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by. And that has made all the difference. So let us therefore go ahead with this road, which is less travel, where people focus more on what they carry out as part of research and also focus equally on their writing skills. So therefore, every researcher must have this toolbox and use it judiciously and effectively to complete his or her research study. So thank you very much for your kind attention. These are my contact details. If you have any queries or anything that you would like to ask or discuss, since I'm not physically present there, but virtually coming to all of you. Thank you very much once again. This is the list of bibliography. Thank you all for your kind, active listening. Thank you.